where is Who But Man being played, and what interest has been expressed in it?
Well, we've pitched it to the bluegrass community, radio community, and it's been embraced by those programmers who also program gospel, because it's undeniable. It can't go either way. So.
And tell me a little of the history of gospel music in your own repertoire and also in the tradition of bluegrass. Mm-hmm. Because I think of bluegrass as being banjo-driven, fast up-tempo stuff. So I don't tend to think of it having a religious flavor.
Oh, well, welcome to America. Gospel has always been embraced by the bluegrass community, and it's true, the banjo-driven songs are really the hallmark of a bluegrass repertoire. But there were people who came along who loved that, and like me, for instance, who saw the beauty in the ballad too, and some songs just don't, they don't lend themselves to having banjo instrumentation, and being a chick singer, I always kind of and an old folk-a-doke, I kind of wanted to use the acoustic instruments because they seem to suit my voice.
And speak about where gospel sits in your repertoire. Was over the course of your progress as a recording artist, did you start off with gospel being a major element? Did it come in and out?
Well, one of my first recordings as a solo artist was for a label in Brentwood, Tennessee, called Brentwood Records, and I was brought to them by Bill Vorndick, who had just produced Alison Krauss, and they were going to let me do a gospel project and a secular project, and we ended up doing Friends for a Lifetime first, which was entirely gospel, but it's touched a lot of people.
And how did Friends for a Lifetime do in terms of its selling arc or its ongoing playability?
Well,
success?
there was one article, I think it was the Cleveland Plains Dealer, that said it was one of the top 100 albums of the century. So, that was my best review. But we got wonderful reviews. And do you know the year after that one came out, IBMA started a gospel category in their awards?
Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why had they not had one?
I don't know, but Doyle Lawson had been putting out incredible gospel albums really strong ones. And I think between that and Friends for a Lifetime and maybe some other, of course, I'm sure there are other artists, they saw a void.
And when I think of classic bluegrass, I think of Bill Monroe. Mm-hmm. Did he do gospel, or where did gospel come in?
Yeah. He did the quartets and things, and the Stanley Brothers is who I preferred to listen to, and they did tons of gospel. I just think the whole bluegrass community, it was born out of rural community, and church going was a part of that, in black and white communities, which is where bluegrass came from.
What is it that is unique to bluegrass gospel compared to regular gospel? It seems like there's oil and water there. I tend to think of this banjo and the mandolin and guitar ripping
quartet
away, and then so it's vocal.
I think it has a lot to do with vocal. And see, there's a certain cadence and a certain vocal nuance to bluegrass music. The high holler and the yodel and all of those things that we do, and licksmanship that is used in bluegrass gospel, whereas Southern gospel is more vanilla, kind of smoother, little happy joy kind of showbiz thing.
Now you got this as a poem. How did you find the poem?
Well, I have an agent here in Canada, a booking agent named Bob Jensen, and he's a poet and an author, and he's published, and he works with a lot of his artists in helping him put some icing on his poems, either reading them over an instrumental track I've done that for him before. And I knew that he was interested in my maybe putting one of them to music. And when he shared this one with me, I was just kind of struck in the gut, you know. It got me deep.
Does he do radio? Does he do anything else? Is he known in the publishing world or the recording world beyond
Well,
being
he used
somebody's
to.
agent?
He used to do albums. You know, he was a folk singer when he was a youngin', and he's toured recently. Right when COVID hit, he got stuck in Australia. He got stuck over there and couldn't get home for a few weeks. But he had a really successful tour over there. He stood and recited his poems, and Tony McManus, the famed acoustic guitar player, provided an instrumental track under his readings, and he was very well received.
Have you heard any of those performances?
Yes, he's got an album, a live album of it on his website. So,
Was that something you heard before you started on Who But Man?
yes, I had heard that sort of thing done with
But
his poems.
specifically, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Did it have any influence, do you think? Or
Well, I thought it really enhanced the beauty of his poetry with the music underneath it.
you got the poem. What did you have to do, and how did you collaborate with Bob?
Well, he kind of left it in my hands, and I was so enamored with it that I just started singing I just picked up a guitar and started singing. And the melody just came. It was like a download from the universe. It wasn't necessarily something that I had to labor at very much. When I got into a third, you know, like the different parts of the song, verse, chorus, kind of a bridge, it took a little bit of work, but it really wasn't laborious. So it didn't take long. And I did have to tweak and work with Bob on maybe cutting out some lines just for the sake of the continuity of the song and the length. He didn't want it to be too long. So, and he was very amenable to any changes that I suggested. It was really easy to work with him.
Lyrically, there was something that I guess begged a question in your mind. Tell us about how people might respond to that question, assuming it is not just rhetoric, but who but man? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, Bob's words are sort of a graphic description of the crucifixion in many ways. There are a lot of lines that are, you know, kind of piercing. But I know Bob and his political outlook, you could say social outlook, he's
a raging commie?
He's not a raging commie, no, but
a socialist.
And he was
damn
raised in a Catholic church, so he has that kind of upbringing. So he knows it like the back of his hand, you know. But he also is one who believes in humanity, you know, and kindness to others. And
do you think this song is topical?
I do. As a matter of fact, friends on Facebook, when they heard it, they didn't relate to it so much as a Jesus song as a song about what's happening socially, you know, within all over the world right now, and how inhumane man can be one to the other, especially with the war in Ukraine. As a matter of fact, the artwork, which was a photo that we used for Genevieve Saigon in Switzerland, it actually has the blue and the orange and then yellow colors in it. It looked like the Ukrainian flag, and that wasn't intentional at all, but it just hit at the right time for people to respond to it in different ways. We had one DJ who has a syndicated bluegrass program in Ohio, and
his name is Mullins?
Joe Mullins, said that it sounds like part of the Easter canon, you know, it sounds like a classic Easter song.
and did you arrange it to be released for Easter? Was this a good
Oh yeah,
timing
absolutely.
thing?
Yeah, it was done months ago, but we created a timeline and what to do when, so that it would get to radio in time for the Lenten season.
How does this fit into your past catalog of faith-based songs?
Well, I've kind of made it a point to do something, at least on the spiritual side, in all of my projects. even North by South, which was the one that was a collection of Canadian songs.
Now tell me about actually pulling the thing together mechanically. You worked up some scratch recordings, and what was the process from there?
Well, since the melody came pretty easily, I just made a guitar vocal work file, and then I sent it to Bob and suggested this and that, and he was so amenable to the changes and the things I wanted to make. He was thrilled with it. And he still seems to be. So it was pretty easy. Then, I've produced a lot of bluegrass albums of my own, so it was easy for me to hear what I wanted to hear on the track. And, since it sounds more like an Easter cantata than even a bluegrass gospel song, I thought the only way to thread it into my community was, to use the fiddle and the mandolin and of course, Jim Hurst on guitar.
Oh, you heard Jim as part of this.
Absolutely.
Simply because of having played with him for so long, or his particular kind of ability to interpret?
Well, he can interpret anything. That's the thing about Jim's playing. He's a great flat picker. And he can do all that country bumpkin kind of stuff. But he's a wonderful ballad player too. He's just got such a wide range of interpretations.
So tell me about the other instruments you heard before you. Like, who did you go out and select?
Well, guys I've worked with, just because I love them to death, and I don't. It's hard to beat them. So Brian McDowell, I asked him to put mandolin and fiddle on the track, and Mark Schatz, who I worked with for about 10 years on the road. He's a wonderful arco player as well as pizzicato on the bass. So and the song calls for long bow, so he was a shoe-in too.
I hope nobody in England is hearing long bow the wrong way and thinking Robin Hood.
Oh.
I'm just being
No,
goofy.
that big long bow on the bass.
That's the big long bow.
Yeah.
And he has a quiver that he hangs at the side of his strings.
Yes, he does.
You had this printed as sheet music. What's the history of you having sheet music printed?
Never done it. I've had a lot of requests to create a Claire Lynch songbook, and I would love to do that. It turns out it can be very expensive because of the royalties you have to pay to the publishers, and a large part of my songwriting catalog belongs to Universal Music Publishing, so I don't know if they'd have mercy on me or not. But at any rate, this is the first time, because it's my publishing. I've had my own publishing for the past, 10, 15 years. I've had a couple people say, have you got music for this? Especially from my gospel repertoire, people have written and said, I'd like to sing this in church. Can you send me the chords and, the lyrics? And I thought, well, this has a perfect church application. So we just created some simple sheet music, very basic.
It's got little chord diagrams above the bars.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of like your Paul Simon songbook.
Well, which one?
Yeah.
And if this goes out, how do you imagine it being performed in churches?
I think a choir would sound great doing it.